Hello, Year 12, Mr. Hunter here. Hope you're well. Hoping to be back very, very, very soon. Maybe this week, possibly, if not perhaps next week, to at least partially be able to teach you. Um, uh, when I do come back, I will make sure that we set aside some time for any of you who wish to see me on a kind of one-to-one basis to catch up on work that you are a bit unsure about. But of course, do keep on emailing me, as a few of you have already done. But what we're looking at today is to what extent do minor and nationalist parties still matter in UK politics? This is a development really on our lesson a couple of weeks ago on minor parties, where we focused quite specifically on UKIP as a success story, and that today we want to focus particularly on parties that only stand in the devolved UK nations, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland, and to form a judgment on the role that they play. So I want you to think back to that lesson and think about what the arguments were you could use for and against, and what you think overall, and just write a very, very short response, just a couple of sentences or a short paragraph, on the question of titled "Evaluate the view that major parties, i.e. the Conservatives, Labour and to an extent the Liberal Democrats, remain the dominant force in UK politics." Then, so the minor UK-wide parties that we've looked at before will include the likes of the Green Party, UKIP, and the Brexit Party, who kind of stand mainly on a single issue. In the Greens, it's the case. In the case of the Greens, it's the environment. In the case of UKIP and the Brexit Party, it was over Brexit and trying to get Britain out of the European Union. So whilst they will produce manifestos on a variety of areas, their main focus is one specific kind of topic, as it were. You do also get parties that exist for fun, like the Monster Raving Loony Party. I thought I'd just chuck that in there. And you have had in the past for example, the now defunct Independent Group for Change, who tried to form a breakaway from the Labour and Conservative parties and create a new kind of major centrist party. This did fail, for a variety of reasons, with their members eventually joining up either with the Lib Dems or losing their seats or retiring. Very quick task, just list 3 reasons for why these parties exist. Just going on what I've just said, okay? And as a challenge, why is UKIP considered a success despite never having elected more than 1 MP in a general election? Something to think about if you can get onto it. Then we've got parties that only stand in either Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. This includes, in Scotland, you've got most famously the SNP, more on them in a moment. In Wales, Plaid Cymru. Both of these parties want to bring about independence in their respective countries. Sorry. So the SNP wants an independent Scotland, Plaid Cymru wants an independent Wales. In Northern Ireland, it is very, very mixed up. In fact, the major UK parties, whilst they will stand in Scotland and Wales, do not stand typically in Northern Ireland, and will instead have sort of sister parties in Northern Ireland, depending on where they stand on kind of the sectarian divides and on the topic of Northern Irish, on Northern Ireland, either joining with the Republic of Ireland or staying with the UK. So you've got Sinn Féin, for example, who believe in the United Ireland along with the SDLP. Sinn Féin famously do have a number of MPs, but do not take their place in the British Parliament, as that would involve swearing allegiance to the Queen. So they actually don't take their seats in British Parliament, bit of a quirk of the system there for you. The SDLP do, and they kind of align themselves with the Labour Party and exist along those lines. DUP were quite prominent and quite important between 2017 and 2019, because for a while they were propping up the Conservatives with their 10 MPs, because the Conservatives didn't achieve a majority and they needed DUP votes. We've also got the Ulster Unionist Party, and both the DUP and the UUP do they believe in, they are unionists, so they think that Northern Ireland should remain part of the UK. And then you've got the Alliance, which are nominally unionist, but will also take on Republican members as well, and are kind of more closely lined up to the Liberal Democrats. And really, a couple of things to think about. Why would these parties exist? So think about the SNP, for example. What's their main reason for existence? They give at least 2 reasons. And why do they stand in UK-wide general elections? Now, it's important to note because Scotland has its own devolved parliament, for example, as does Wales and Northern Ireland, sorry. Why doesn't the SNP just stand in Scottish elections? Why do they stand in the 58 Scottish seats in UK general elections? Have a think about that, and we will revisit it when I'm back if you are stuck. Now, there is a source attached that on the following slide that I will also send you separately. And I want you to find 2 points in the source, read through it and find 2 points in the source that support the view that major parties, Labour, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives, are still dominant, and find 2 points in the source that challenge the point. Okay, so just literally bullet point form is absolutely fine at this point. That's the source. I'll make sure it's sent to you separately. So, as each of these points comes up, what I want you to do is explain in just one sentence or so what this suggests about the importance of minor parties. So, for example, 2 of the last 4 governments have been supported by minor parties. I mentioned that the DUP supported the Conservatives in between 2017 and 2019, and the Lib Dems supported the Conservatives between 2010 and 2015 and created a formal coalition. This comes about, by the way, when no party manages to gain an overall what's known as a majority. In an election, we elect MPs. There are 650 MPs. To gain a majority and be able to rule in your own right, you need to win at least 50% of them so that you can pass laws by yourselves without needing the votes of other parties. And so, for example, in 2010, the Conservatives only won, I think, 301 seats. So they had to get the help of the Lib Dems. So 2 of the last 4 governments being supported by minor parties. Does that suggest that minor parties are important or not important? Explain why. First past the post no longer seems to be returning majority governments. Although I do note that we actually do have a majority government now, in that Boris Johnson won for 365 seats in 2019. So, but nevertheless, before that in 2017 and 2010, we had no party won a majority, and even in 2015, when the Conservatives won a majority, it was a very, very small one, and it only took a few MPs to rebel against the government for them to not be able to pass laws. Tricky situation for any government. In 2010, only 65% of people voted for the 2 main parties, and in 2015 it was 67.3%. Minor parties have been some of the worst hit by the disproportionate nature of first past the post. UKIP, for example, got 1 MP despite getting 12.6% of the national vote. And the Lib Dems in 2010 scored 23.5% of the national vote, but only got 57 MPs out of 650, 8.8%. So minor parties do, even if they get lots and lots of votes, they do often get quite stuffed over by our election system. In the 2019 election, 75% of voters voted either Conservative or Labour, with this being slightly down from the 82.4% in 2017. Nevertheless, this is much, much more than what we had in 2010 and 2015. We've mentioned this in a previous lesson, but the biggest political event of the last few decades, probably barring COVID, was a change brought about by a minor party, which was UKIP, forcing the EU referendum, because David Cameron, the Conservatives, were terrified of losing seats to UKIP. So they promised a referendum on the UK's membership in the EU, which they duly won the election and duly got carried out, and as a result we had Brexit. So in a way you can see this as UKIP forcing the EU referendum. So what does that suggest about the importance of minor parties? Are they important or not? I just want you to create, we're just going to focus now particularly on the Scottish National Party. Now, for those of you who are unaware, their main aim is kind of quite obvious. Their main aim is Scottish independence. And they are very, very important at the moment and playing a big role in UK politics news. They had huge success in the last election in winning 48 seats out of the 59 in Scotland, which is an increase in 13 on 2017. Also in the devolved Scottish Parliament, which is the separate parliament which only runs Scotland and only deals with Scottish affairs, they hold a majority. So they are the biggest party by far, and they hold a majority, and they run the Scottish government by themselves, and Nicola Sturgeon is the First Minister. They held a referendum on full Scottish independence in 2014 and lost 55% to 45%. And have been leading on fresh calls for a new referendum. With actually it might be worth following this because their conference is debate plans this week on what to do basically if Boris Johnson refuses to allow them to have another referendum on independence. I want you to create a fact file. So do some research, look up their history, look up their beliefs, look up their aims and success, and as a challenge you can extend your answer from one of the previous slides on why they stand in UK parliamentary elections when they want to break up the union, with specific examples linked to their aims. To help you, you can use this, which is a summary of their manifesto in 2017. Okay, so knock yourselves out with that. And then finally, go back to the source, look back at your points that you made about it, and using the information from the lesson today, write out one of the points in full, one paragraph or so, absolutely fine. Okay, so it's lots and lots of smaller things today, but I can answer any questions via email or on Teams, and feel free to get in touch when I'm back, hopefully, as I said, hopefully this week, if not next. See you soon, guys.